This Sky Sports documentary has said that cricket is institutionally racist.
That's in loads of other sports, like golf. So that's a cricketing problem in terms of it's elitist. How do we get more people into cricket and to enjoy cricket?
That's the reason why this is important, to make the best, not only for the community, but also for the nation as a whole.
And then there's an Asian stereotype regarding fitness. Well, are they fit enough then?
With how Adil Rashid and Moeen Ali, there's no World Cup winning side. Hello and welcome back to the Brown Playbook. Today, we're looking into the story of British South Asian cricketers. Growing up, some examples like Nasser Hussain, Owais Shah, Ravi Bopara, and plenty more, come to mind. And recently, there's been data that shows that there's plenty of South Asian cricketers that make it through the county system until the age of 18. But for some reason, from that point to the very pro level, there's a massive drop-off compared to white British cricketers.
Yeah, for sure.
So elaborate on that for me. Firstly, what your take is on why that might be, and just generally, how do you think that plays into the British South Asian cricket story?
Yeah, man, for sure. Well, I think firstly, growing up, it was really positive because you could always look up and see Monty, Ravi, as you said. And even now, then like shifting to the next generation, you've got obviously Adil Rashid, Moeen Ali, Bashir coming through, Rayhan Ahmed. So I think overall, in terms of a positive branding story, there's always been examples there, which is different, for example, from other sports, say football is the main example, especially in England. But I think the key you mentioned about getting through the pathway to 18 is key. So I think obviously participation at like a recreational level, and then also obviously then British South Asians getting into county setups is all doing really well. And I think the first like kind of myth or narrative to shake off straight away and put to bed is that when they do get to 18 and they're going to be handed a pro contract or not, there was data shown by a person who did a PhD on British South Asian cricketers that shows that compared to white counterparts, for example, they score the same runs, as in like they perform as well cricketing wise, have as many wickets, for example, if you're a bowler. And then there's an Asian stereotype regarding fitness. Well, are they fit enough then? And the researcher found out through data that they are. And that kind of makes sense because if you've been at elite county setup all the way through,
18 isn't when you get found out for your fitness.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. Then you already know about nutrition. You already know about working out. Therefore, like that should be completely fine. And it's shown that it is. So that's like the first thing we can just dispel.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I think the key is then, okay, then why is it? And what they said in a Sky Sports documentary that clearly came out was that it was to do with cultural differences. Now I thought that's quite interesting because it's just a bit like, so why? Is it like he mentioned style of communication or maybe inclusivity, which I was a bit like, do you know the way I kind of related to?
Go on.
Was we both worked in corporate. It's kind of the corporate game and the cricket game. So for example, you could be really good at your job in corporate, but if you don't understand the game and who to please or who to know, then, and for example, even though you may be sick at your job, you may be quite outlandish or quite antisocial or something, you're not turning up to work, drinks or socials or lunches, then that you can be put down for that because it's your overall reputation. 100%. So is it, for example, South Asian players, they don't have that almost like the cricketing industry reputation. Maybe they're obviously, for example, if you're Muslim, you're not going to go for a beer at the clubhouse after. And do you really get ranked on that? Potentially later on if they think they could, because they could see you as antisocial. But really it's cricket not being inclusive.
And it's also a few decision makers, right? That this depends on, like the guy that selects people to go from district to county, the guy that decides who's going to get the pro contracts once, all the kids are old enough to get to 18. And
I think
I think that's the point, right? That it's like, have these biases snuck into these key decision makers, which has made this Sky Sports documentary has said, like, that cricket is institutionally racist.
Yeah.
Which I understand, but I kind of wish that there's just not too much focus on that side of it. So if we're talking about that documentary specifically, right, we'll get on to like loads of other points that they made and like our opinions on those points. But I think with that documentary, it titled itself as The Story of British South Asian Cricketers. But it was just the story of racism in English cricket, And I think the story is so much broader than that.
For sure, because
there's so many success stories.
Yeah.
And if anything, I think focusing on the success stories not only gives more credit to the players, because fine, if you found all this data about how these things are wrong with the system, yet these players from this background, which is, yes, discriminated against, still made it through. Moeen Ali still won 2 World Cups with England, you know, T20 and ODI. Adil Rashid the same. Like, Nasser Hussain did captain England. And he admitted himself that, like, he had a particularly special setup where, like, his dad was, you know, a really prominent member of his cricket club. So it was a bit of an outlier. But at the same time, it still happened.
For sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I also think that the positive side of all the success stories then actually motivates and obviously inspires the younger generation.
Of course.
But I think what's key is that you need to split it up between, okay, what's a South Asian story, for example, and also be very careful that not just group South Asians, but a Gujarati family may have a very different experience to a Bengali family.
Yeah.
So also when you do, just don't stop at South Asian. You've got to go into different countries because everyone faces different challenges. That's the key. And you need to split between, South Asian challenge, but also a cricketing challenge. Like a cricketing challenge when it comes to like elitism, private school, big access to barriers. That's not just South Asians. For example, that's black people, other minorities, and also that's in loads of other sports like golf. So that's a cricketing problem in terms of it's elitist. How do we get more people into cricket and to enjoy cricket with that? Which I know the ECB has provided some more funding, and we'll get into that. But South Asian specific, I think it's key to highlight the positive stories, to also highlight, okay, I guess if the data does show the drop off, go into it a little bit, but go into it with a lens of, okay, so why is it? So you mentioned cultural differences, and this is where I want to bring up another great story of SACA, the South Asian Cricket Academy. That's really good because what they do is that's basically exactly what you need. I honestly think that's the solution. We just need it at a younger level so they can get educated about those kind of how to build your cricket reputation, if so, right?
Yeah.
Because as you say, there's a few decision makers, and if they, for example, don't have a diverse or cultural board, they may not be aware of these things. Therefore, that will impact their decision making if they don't know anything about it. So I think Saka's a great story because we saw Jaffer Chauhan's in the documentary. He came through there, and it's basically for cricketers that were in the county system, didn't get a professional contract, and then obviously go to Saka, play against professional counties and hopefully showcase themselves well enough to then get a contract, right? And you said, what was the stat you said?
But regarding what?
The 14.
Yeah, so the documentary showed clearly that since it's being set up, which isn't a long time ago, right? It's only been 3 or 4 years, right?
Yeah.
They've managed to help sign 14 contracts for 18 plus players who were missed by the system, right? Let go at 18, but because of this academy, they got signed to pro contracts. So what SAC has essentially proved is that the system misses players and that they can still, it can still be salvaged even if you're not picking them up at a slightly earlier age.
Yeah, for sure.
So like, I love the concept of that, but I want to give a bit more context around why like this conversation is important in the first place. So like, I think there's going to be a portion of people that might listen to this who immediately think, well, why does it need to be equalized, right? What other country in the world needs to do this? Maybe Australia, but India doesn't need to equalize. They've got preferential treatment towards Maharashtra compared to the other states, But I think it's really important to mention that South Asian participation in cricket as a proportion is massive because of the interest in the communities. So it's like saying, let's say, I don't know what the stats are exactly, but let's say, a third of recreational cricketers are South Asian. I'm pretty sure that's not far off. I mean, in my league that I play in on Saturdays, there's entire teams that are just South Asian, right? Like there's so many of them now. And it's increased even in the last 5 years.
For sure.
But it's not that just because of that, we should put in a DEI process where like there's just that many in the professional team as well, or that many directors of county boards that are from diverse backgrounds.
Of course.
What it means is if there's that many people playing, but there's not the same proportion of people in the professional side, it means so many people are getting missed. and we're not making the most of the talent pool that's available from an enormous community with an enormous interest in the sport, which holds back English cricket.
Yeah.
So I think it's just key to mention that this isn't some sort of like, you know, DEI process where you're like trying to just get people involved because, they don't look the same, they face backlash, so we need to even the playing field. It's not just about, this is about sport.
Yeah.
It's about getting the best out of your population for a sport that your nation competes in at the very top level. So I think it's really important to show that's the reason why this is important, to make the best, not only for the community, but also for the nation as a whole.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyways, that's something that I'm quite passionate about saying, because I just think people like immediately, like I saw comments on that documentary saying like, the British right-wing press is going to have a field day with this one. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like immediately, like I'm almost watching this doc with that in mind, that like, what are people going to say about this? Are people going to be fuming that this is even a talking point? Because so many South Asian cricketers have come up. So why are we talking about this? But I just wanted to explain why, basically.
No, I think it's key. I think it's key to position ourselves completely. Is like, the reason this is important is because it benefits England cricket as a whole. If England cricket basically gets the most out of their talent pool and then they have the best 11 playing, then it only works well for England cricket.
Correct.
The reason why this is a conversation is because obviously the data shows, as you said, recreationally and then in county cricket there's a drop off. So the only key thing is why, and that's a multitude of factors, right? As we've said, but one the reason why this podcast is also important is to dismiss and put myths to bed that completely aren't true due to data. Now that's just objective, so we want to be as objective as we can and not subjective,
of course,
because of course in this conversation, especially about identity and race, so many subjective things can come in that it can become quite, basically subjective and very experience and opinion based. But we want to kind of keep it as a data based approach. So if the data says this, then okay, cool, how can we then find a solution to it? Which I think is very key, because you want to keep the combo within that to make sure that you always have consistency and clarity.
Correct.
So I think that's key. But I also want to touch on what Moeen Ali said and Samit Patel, because I think this is a key, and this kind of talks about how we should talk about the topic. So for example, Moeen Ali said basically his dad always gave him the advice that if he always performs well with the bat, like basically let the runs do the talking and they'll have to pick you because you're performing better than everyone. And that now has a nuanced debate, because of course if you perform in the cricket field you should obviously get picked, but as that doctorate researcher said, that if they're taking the most runs and wickets, it's not always the case. Which means there's something added extra, which to be honest, when I kind of relate it to a corporate job, it's a given. You've always been told that, okay, you really need to be really good, but also your reputation does matter. Now are these guys not getting told that early enough? I don't know, or are told that at all? I think that's a key question. And I think the other point is that Samit Patel basically was like, well, if you're good enough, you'll play. Basically, the way Moeen Ali said it is that his tone and supportive tone is much better than basically Samit Patel being like, well, if you're good enough, you can play. Because there's already been stats that show that's not the case. So I like the angle of Moeen Ali's dad saying, look, you probably need to be a little bit better, but this is how you do it, rather than just so blunt, because then the facts say otherwise.
No, I completely agree. I mean, your equivalence of the corporate thing, I think I would bet that that's true, because you don't get taught soft skills like that in school for the corporate world. So how are we going to assume that you get taught those kind of soft skills when you're in a sporting route, when you're like 13, 14? I just don't think that's something that any kind of education provides, really. You know what I mean? And I think it's inherent in people from like a certain background who kind of know how the system works. And we have to learn it, and that's fine. I think that's part of the game. I think all that means is, for the people who did manage to crack it, it's just that much more credit to them. Like, I just think the first thing I thought when I saw this doc is, how much more amazing is it that Moeen Ali like took a hat trick for England in test match cricket after like decades of no one ever doing it? How amazing is it that England produced a leg spinner in Adil Rashid? That was like, he is a modern great. You know what I mean? Like, it just makes their achievements that much better in my eyes. And I'm trying to look at it from that positive lens, because I know it's a negative conversation at the end of the day, right? Because we're saying that, the system's flawed, but things are being done about it. The fact that so many people care to like expose it in the first place means that, there's a means to fix it in the long term. And all while this was happening, there's still loads of South Asian cricketers that paved the way.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm trying to look at it from that positive lens, to be fair. And I think the story of South Asian cricketers in the UK is bigger than the recent racism case with like Azeem Rafiq.
Yeah.
It's bigger than, you know, like that stat. That's something that needs addressing. But I think South Asians have already embedded their like legacy on English cricket history already, you know?
Yeah.
Like without Adil Rashid and Moeen Ali, there's no World Cup winning side. Of course, the rest of the team as well, but you know, you've made your mark there in that achievement. So yeah, I think the tone, as you said, about when talking about something around race is really important. And I think that's the tone that we should be taking about the positive side of it. Even though, yes, of course, it is a bit of a negative.
Well, obviously, as we're trying to say, we always agree with the thing that if you are good enough, you should play. But then obviously this documentary has revealed some other things. Therefore, we need to look into it.
Of course.
Because we both agree with that. I think the other key point is that this needs to be split up, as we said, into a wider cricketing debate.
Yes.
So, for example, I think
100%.
that's where the Rafiq case also works, because obviously it was an investigation and it was proved true. And that does actually open conversations in the ECB. Yorkshire obviously now have a diverse board and their CEO, I think, is South Asian. And that's what it really cracks on that point. Now, obviously now the ECB and the biggest organisations and all the counties are talking about how can we be more diverse. And usually the sad reality in life is until something happens, nothing's really going to be done about it.
Yeah.
So I think that's just a cricketing problem. Right,
100%. Like this is the thing, because they focused on this in the second half of the doc. So this is what I ended up thinking when I finished. There's so many ways you can cut this. So they've cut this with, I remember a key stat saying, British Indians are significantly better off economically than British Pakistanis and British Bangladeshis. So British Pakistanis and British Bangladeshis they have more barriers. That's true, don't get me wrong. But how are we going to keep cutting this? So for example, name me one cricketer from Merseyside, white or not white. There isn't one. Like, there's a couple from like Newcastle area, Northumberland, Mark Wood.
Yeah.
Who else? Like, cricket is like posted in certain areas. The southeast of England, Yorkshire, and the northwest of England and Yorkshire. And obviously there's counties everywhere, like the Midlands, of course, they produce. I get that. But there's differences in the cultures in every one of these places.
For sure.
So the key stat was private school kids are more likely to be open to the pathway to become a professional cricketer. Well, of course, because cricket in the UK is very different to cricket around the world. And let's not forget that, right? Like cricket in India, like I sort of played in the system there a little bit. It's purely just about the school system. So every single school plays cricket the way most schools in the UK play football.
Yeah.
Right? But that's what you need to be evening out. You need to get more young people that don't already play cricket playing cricket. So I think that's more of a talking point than, you know, this community has it harder than this community. I think like the North versus the South. I mean, the North as a whole, as a region, is significantly poorer than the South of England. So that means what? The entire North of England doesn't have access to cricket? No, that's not true. Because why are we producing so many people from Yorkshire in the white community?
Yeah.
You know? So I think there's loads of ways to cut it, but I think the key takeaway is that you want to try make it more inclusive from an economic background, like as well as the racial stuff. You want to fix the racial stuff, of course, but you want it so that everyone can play at a school level, or, you know, you just want to get more people interested rather than just everyone just getting straight into football, which most kids in the UK do. That's the way you want to approach it, rather than, this community has it harder than this community. So that was my key takeaway from it. But like, what do you think about that private school point?
No, I think that the private school point is clear. Like cricket as a whole needs to just be more accessible to people, because it is expensive. You've got all the gear, you've got all the travelling. People, it's not as common, for example, as football, because football has such a bigger season. It's all you need is a ball. So I do think that cricket definitely needs more education around it. Definitely, for example, like England won the 2019 World Cup. It makes a spike of interest, which is key. And the other key point regarding both like equality and access is that the ECB just needs to put their money where its mouth does and not just be a PR and just be like, oh, we funded this, but then they need to do more, if that makes sense. So that's the key. So whether it's like the Azeem Rafiq case or just cricketing accessibility in general, the ECB, the only thing is that they can't just be like, oh, we've got some negative PR there, let's just tick a box, we'll just fund a couple more, we'll say we've done $1 million for it, but you need to be doing more. Like, what are the actual cricket centres saying? Are you going to those places in England and actually where there's slightly less cricket? Are you trying to boost interest in there so you can find some unearthed hidden gems talent-wise there? That's the only thing I would say.
100%. I couldn't agree more, to be honest. Like, I think that's the focus. It has to be. Cricket's got to compete with other sports in the UK because there's so many sports here. And I think it probably behind football, like, it's, you know, football's just so far ahead, but like it probably competes with, like, in terms of level of attention with like rugby,
for sure,
tennis, it's there and thereabouts, even though there's like loads of stadiums, cricket stadiums across England. But you know, the average person on the street is not following cricket in the UK. Like, that's just a fact, and that's what needs to change. Do you know what I mean? Because there's such a rich cricketing history. Obviously, there's where it originates. But I'd love to see the average person love it more, and it not just be like something that has a bit of a niche following. I think that's what the ECB needs to target, and I think that's the door that this race conversation's opened up. It's how do you make cricket more popular in England? And yeah, I don't know the answer to it, otherwise I'd be working in the ECB. But that's the problem we need to address.
But also, there's multiple stats out there that more British South Asians play football than play cricket now. Because obviously of this new generation, and obviously of the popularity of football as well. But that dispels another stereotype, especially in our generation and below, that, oh my God, they just play cricket and nothing else. No, actually, more people that born here and grew up here, and especially if their parents have now spent 20, 30 years in this country, are playing football.
Yeah, of course, and that's bound to be the case. Of course, like,
but
the scene is enormous. I feel like that. But you're right, that's definitely a stereotype, right? That, like, you know, Asians are just going to like cricket more. You're right. That's a very key point. Actually, it's good that you pointed that out. But at the same time, like, there is so much interest still in the community that does still follow cricket. That like, I think English cricket can be a lot better than it is, and I also think that this is a key point, and this is another thing I saw in the comments, actually. I'm keen to see your take on it, because it said that this is the sort of thing, the racism part, this is the sort of thing that proud British people, British Asian people, would listen to and not support specifically England cricket. They'd support England in football and stuff because they've like circumvented these things. But they're like, I didn't know this because I never felt it myself. But there's a community of like British Asians who have felt a bit of disdain towards England over the years because of this sort of thing. And I just wonder if they fix this, then maybe they'll have a wider audience, because a massive part of the community is not going to look at England that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I think my answer to that is, I think there's always going to be a bit of a generational hangover. So I think that mentality comes from your parents who moved here, and that's a very key point, and important and valid point, that, for example, why would you go into something if you think you are going to face racism or you have been singled out before? So if your parent or your elders are telling you an experience that was obviously negative, you may carry that and hence not support England. So I think that's the first thing. There's always going to be a generational hangover somewhere, where there was a lot more racism back in the 60s, 70s and 80s when a lot of immigrants first came over. That's therefore been passed on to younger generations. So that would be my first point in terms of, like, okay, why there's a bit of negativity towards it. And then I think you're also right on your second point in terms of, if there was some more South Asian representation in the England team or in the professional game, would it 100% help the attitudes towards like England cricket?
Correct.
Of course it would.
100%.
Because you see yourselves in them, and I don't know, if they, for example, went on a podcast or did an interview, the more you heard them speak, the more you probably would realise that they had the same upbringing and come up as you, which means that obviously you relate to them and then see them as a hero or someone, basically to look up to. So I think, that would definitely help.
But overall, like, to finish, I think that, like, English cricket, I think, is as racist or around as racist as England is. That's the way I see it. I don't think this is a cricket story. I think this is just a racism story, and cricket's a part of it. And like, people are going to tackle this from all angles, whether it's corporate, whether it's other sports, whether it's obviously cricket, and it will improve over time. But I still think it's at a really good place now. I mean, when I see the World Cup celebrations, and like, you know, all the white players know that Moeen Ali and Adil Rashid don't rate the alcohol. They're like, okay, we're about to go. Yeah. They let him run away before they spray. I'm like, that's something that we would not have seen even 10 years before.
And that
like, there's a certain understanding between cultures just because they've been here for a longer time now. So they've had more time to integrate. And you know, white communities, local communities, you know, what's the right word to say that? Ethnically British people, like, they've had more time to understand different cultures as well.
Yeah,
so
I know that
will continue to happen. It will continue to improve everything, but specifically for this conversation, cricket as well.
Yeah, and I think that's just true in the whole conversation.
Yeah.
Basically being like, well, if you have South Asians in the first team, obviously Moeen Ali and Adil Rashid can educate everyone about Islam, like Monty Panesar could educate people about Sikhism. Of course. That just kind of translates to the county cricket boards. Maybe the Azeem Rafiq thing, what it did is a bit of like a bit of a catalyst to get a conversation going. And just how, for example, a lot of the England team will then become coaches. That's what needed, because the culture and the organisation starts from the top. So as long as you've got awareness and educated people about these certain things at the top, then it should filter down. So that's why it's another great point to have these guys in the first team in England, because then they can obviously educate everyone. So then when these become the next generation of coaches, they know.
Correct, bro. No, I think that's a great point. And I think the story of British South Asians in cricket is just starting as well. I mean, I think there's just going to be so many, even like there's so many youngsters now in Rehan Ahmed, Shoaib Bashir, like there's others.
Yeah, Rehan Ahmed's brother.
I mean, someone that I played growing up, Ajit Singh Dale. I mean, he's making really good marks in county cricket. And there's plenty of others that we're not going to be able to shout out in this video. But I think as a scene, if you want to look at it that way, it's constantly growing, and it will continue to do so because of the level of interest in the community. So excited to see what it brings. Yeah, good point to finish.
Yeah, man. Cheers, guys. Awesome. Thank you so much. Make sure you subscribe in a bit.
Cheers.